Hello and welcome to Midwest Writers Room. Our mission is to encourage, educate, and celebrate writers of the Midwest. I'm Luella Schmidt.
I'm Ken Humphrey. Today's chapter break episode features Lorisa Wiedenheft and her latest publication, The Oasis, which came out in May 16th of 2025.
With a background in special education, Lorisa is now pursuing her dream career of being a children's author. She has two poetry collections, Love, Complications, and Reflections, and her poetry has been featured in Creative Wisconsin, Bramble, and Remington Review. Lorisa enjoys matcha lattes. Am I pronouncing matcha right, or is it matcha?
It's matcha.
Okay. You can leave that in, Ken. I'm not that embarrassed that I don't.
Me either. So thank you for asking.
Lorisa enjoys matcha lattes, supporting the Milwaukee Bucks, and going to the beach. When not writing, she's either curled up with a book, working on an embroidery project, or rewatching Gilmore Girls. Hailing from the Appalachian Mountains, she now lives in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, with her husband, two boys, and sweet dog Olaf.
So fun fact, Gilmore Girls, I have never watched, never had any intent to watch, but one of my favorite hair metal frontmen, Sebastian Bach from Skid Row, was in it for several seasons. And that is like almost tempting me to watch it. But that's too much fanboying, so I probably still abstain.
I totally forgot that Sebastian Bach was in that. That's really funny.
Yep.
Yeah, he's awesome.
All right, so let's take a look at the book Oasis, and here's a synopsis. It's summer 1992 in small town North Carolina. 10-year-old Charly has had a rough life. Her parents died in a car accident when she was 5. She and her brother Matty moved in with Granny, who is always strapped for cash. Charly shops for clothes at the Salvation Army, is bullied for being different, and struggles with anger issues. Then the unthinkable happens. One night, their trailer catches on fire and burns to the ground. The family moves to a motel with sagging beds, scratchy sheets, and noisy neighbors. As they wait for the insurance money, Granny nearly collapses under the stress.
Oofta. Well, I feel like I have to say oofta because your sweet dog is named Olaf. But Lorisa, Lorisa, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Midwest Writers Room. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and I just really appreciate you guys. This is my first podcast interview.
Yay, we're so honored to be your first.
Yeah.
First of many, I am sure.
So before I ask you questions about this book, one thing that I have to take note of, it seems like motel always comes with scratchy sheets and sagging beds. If you go to a hotel, that's like a better version. Like they don't sag as much and they don't scratch as much, but motel kind of seems to be along that lines. They're synonymous of those things when I think of motel. So Lorisa, let's dive into this. Tell us, how did this story come about? What was kind of the genesis of this book for you?
Well, in the spring of 2023, I was planning for the upcoming conference with the Wisconsin Fellowship of Poets. And for this conference, we were supposed to bring a poem to share for like a round table where you critique each other's poems. At the time, I was working on a different verse novel. And so I didn't really have any new poems to share. And it was one of those times where I would try to write stuff, and when you force it, just nothing really comes out. Everything was just really blah. But then one day I was driving to Kenosha to meet a friend, and I see this sign on the highway that says Oasis Inn. And it stuck out to me. For one thing, at a picture of a palm tree, and we don't have palm trees in Wisconsin. And it said Oasis Inn, but it was surrounded by concrete. I didn't see anything around it that looked like an oasis. And when I saw that sign, I immediately saw this family in my mind. I saw Granny and I saw the two kids, and I knew that they were checking into a motel because of some kind of tragedy. But anyways, I went and I had lunch with my friend, came back home, and I sat down on my computer and I typed up this poem about this family. And it was pretty different from what I normally would write. It's much more story. But I felt like it was the best thing I had. So I took it to the conference and I shared it with my table. And after critiquing it, they said that they wanted to know more. And they said, what happens next? But like I said, I was working on a different verse novel. I didn't have the brain space for what happened next with this family. So I just kind of put it to the back of my mind. Well, then that summer of 2023, our boys were staying with my parents for a couple of weeks. And so I just sat down at the computer one afternoon, and I don't know what it was. I think I pulled up that poem, was kind of looking at it, and I just started typing. And it was just one of those perfect writer's moments where you're just in the story and you're just typing, and hours go by and you don't even notice it. And so that's where I got my inspiration, and that's where I got my title, The Oasis, from.
And
That's really
know
cool.
that. I know that that hotel that along there, it's a sign, it's a billboard that looks like it belongs in Southern Florida or California. You know, it's bright blue with some orange lettering, if I remember right. Yes, the palm tree, and it's just completely out of place. It stands out.
Yeah.
I think it's so cool that it's just another reminder. We talk a lot about curiosity and how writers find their inspiration, and just paying attention to the world around you and stuff like that can strike. I just think that's such a cool story.
Yeah, it is. And the muse. We often ask writers about the muse, right? Kind of what cranks them forward, what do they need going? But it sounds like you sat down one day and the muse just landed squarely on your shoulders, and bam, there you went.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yep.
So it's not your first book, but what was your path to publication like for this one, since you kind of veered away from, your normal poetry?
Well, it felt a bit long to me because for that first verse novel, I queried quite a bit. I would query for a few months, take a break, query again, take a break. And then it ultimately ended up shelving that book. But for The Oasis, I wrote it mostly in summer and fall of 2023. And so then in spring and summer of 2024 is when I queried. And I queried both literary agents and small presses. And Orange Hat Publishing was one of the last ones I submitted to, but one of the first to say yes. And since they're right here in Wisconsin, it just felt like a really good fit for me. I liked being able to work with someone that was local and already had a name established here in Wisconsin. And then I signed my contract in September 2024 with them. And then the next few months were really fun for me because I self-published my 2 books of poetry. So I pretty much did everything. A friend helped me with the covers, but other than that, it was only me. So it was really fun for me to get to work with an editor and a cover designer and an interior designer. And I just love what they did with it. I just think they did such a great job. The interior designer put like a little branch at the end of every poem. And I just thought that was a really neat touch because my book is a lot about family and found family. And that little branch just makes me think of the family tree. And so, and like the different fonts that she picked, it was all just like, I just was geeking out over it. It was so much fun. And then of course we had all the other like little tasks that you have to do leading up to the launch date, like your advanced reader reviews and the one sheet and stuff like that. Things that I had no idea I could do or needed to do when I was self-publishing my 2 poetry books. So it was 2 months. That's relatively quick compared to most books as far as the path to publication. Most people can't look at that and think, oh, my book should be out in 2 years. That was kind of quick, but it felt long to me since I'd been working for a few years with this other book.
Yeah, I'm sure from the inside, it always does feel longer from the outside. Yeah. And we'd be remiss if we didn't give a shout out to Orange Hat, friend of the program, sponsor of this year's WWA Fall Conference in Stevens Point.
Yeah.
So
Yay, Orange
glad
Hat.
you landed with them.
Yeah, they're great.
So your path to publication was actually, it sounds like is fairly smooth compared to a lot of people, right? Just from your timeline, but also for getting in. So apart from that, which wasn't that much of a struggle, anything that really tripped you up during the writing of this, or anything that you had to overcome?
Well, for me, I had to get accustomed to receiving feedback. When I did my poetry books, and years ago, I didn't share my work that much. I didn't know a lot of writers. Most of my friends did, other sorts of things. But I was in an online critique group for the Oasis for about 5 or 6 months. And And that got me used to hearing comments about my writing, both constructive criticism and positive feedback. And a lot of my readers really liked the book. And so I was feeling really confident going into querying. And with each no I got, my confidence began to wane. But now that the book is out in the world, I'm just really enjoying getting comments from friends and family. I honestly wish I could sit down with each reader and like pick apart the book, but nobody has read it that closely like I have, obviously. And I don't think anybody really wants to do that. My own mom even forgot one of the characters. So, that's life.
My own mom doesn't know whether she's actually read my books or not. So, I mean, that's probably fairly
My
common.
boys haven't even picked it up. So, I'll find my fan base elsewhere. But, now that it's launched into the world, I'm learning that, we writers can be like bears. We like to go into our little den and hibernate for a few months, and then we come out stumbling around and realize there's a world out there. But writing can be pretty solitary. And so, I've learned that while writing is solitary, a writer's life should not be solitary. We've got to be out there meeting other writers, sharing our work. We can always learn more about the writing process, and we can always make little tweaks and changes to our writing to improve our writing over the years.
Well, and inspiration sparks inspiration, right? When you hang out with your tribe, it's not unusual just to start riffing and coming up with great ideas that you may never thought of if you weren't talking with a like-minded person. I'm in a bunch of different Facebook groups for writers, and it's quite normal for someone, to post an intro or some piece and just for critiquing. Right. And these are truly strange. This is not a critique group where you know people's names, right? It's just truly a a Facebook group full of strangers. And I'm kind of astounded at the number of times that people just can't handle the feedback. Good constructive critique that says, you use this word too often, or, you're tense, flip-flop back and forth. And then the person submitting it just goes on the defensive. And it's like, boy, you don't understand what I'm trying to do, or, whatnot. And they don't get anything constructive out of it. So kudos to you for being able to adjust, understand that critiques are often made in the interest of improving the book, not because somebody hated it or just wants to slam on you. So good for you to adjust to that.
I would echo that too. And just for our listeners, how learning to take feedback is a skill. So just like anything else, you got to practice it and you'll be able to do it too. I was not great at it. Hopefully I'm better now.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how deep you are into this, there's always feedback that tends to cut, and you have to learn to filter out and accept what you think is feedback and ignore noise if someone is just slamming or cutting on you, and not react, not take it personal, because that's just the way it goes.
Yep, for sure.
All right, Luella, are we ready?
Yes, we sure are. So, Lorisa, when you're ready, maybe we're going to have you read a little bit of your book and just share with the listeners a little bit about where you're coming from, if you're starting at the beginning or if you're starting somewhere else, so we know what's going on, and you can take it away whenever you're ready.
Okay. Yep. I'm going to start a bit way into the story. A lot of my book is, tragic and sad, but there is some hope and happiness. Since I'm a natural crier, I'm going to just read a part that's happy and fun. And since this takes place in summer 1992 and it's summer now, I'm going to read a little portion that, even though they live in North Carolina, I think they do some things that are pretty similar to what we like to do here in Wisconsin. And so I'll reiterate the main characters, Granny and Charly and Matty. Charly is 10, Matty is 8, and June is Charly's best friend since first grade. Every summer. June spends every summer at their lake house, and every summer her mom invites me, says I can come spend a couple weeks. I give excuses like, no thank you, Granny doesn't like to drive on the interstate, which is true, she doesn't. But Granny would do about anything for me if I asked her to. That's how grandmas are. The truth is, I can't leave Matty, not for that long. I don't want him to be alone. What if something happened to me when I was so far away from him? June understands. She's the most understanding friend a girl could ask for. You could say the most nonsensical thing like, I wish I were an octopus, and she would understand. However, this summer is different. June's mom invites all three of us to the lake house for a whole week. The lake house. June's lake house is quaint, with white clapboard walls, handmade quilts, and a screened-in porch with wicker furniture. Us three kids share a room with 2 bunk beds. June and I take one, and Matty gets the other. He drapes blankets down the sides to create a fort in the bottom bunk. There's no air conditioning, not even window units like we got at the double wide. June's mom opens all the windows at night, allowing the lake breeze to flow through the whole house. It doesn't get too hot in the daytime with all the trees surrounding the house, shading us from the hot sun. June's dad points them out to me, tells me their names: Leyland cypress, river birch, willow oak. June and I like the hammocks tied between the trees. In the mornings, we read. In the afternoons, we all head down to the water. Sandcastles. June and I wear matching swimsuits so we can be twins. Neither of us has a sister. Each other is the closest thing we got. Matty prepares himself for the water. Goggles, arm floaties, and a swim ring around his belly. He pretends the swim ring is a speedboat. His legs are the motor, kicking and churning up the water. Brum, 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 he says, splashing everybody in his path. June and I race in the water, do handstands and flips, ask Granny to rate us until she gets tired, sprawls out under the umbrella for an afternoon nap. On the shore, Matty is our worker bee. He fills buckets of water, digs a moat, and searches for sticks, shells, and other debris to decorate our castle. I pack the sand in my bucket, turn it over, tap the top, release, make walls and turrets. Charades. The Eiffel Tower, says Granny. Statue of Liberty? June guesses. Matty reaches his arms to the ceiling, stands on tiptoe. A California redwood, I shout. Ding, ding. You got it right, Charly, he says. I reach into the basket, pull out a slip of paper. Flipping pancakes, it says. I act it out, maybe too dramatically, because June guesses I'm flinging pizza dough. I make my movements less exaggerated. Granny guesses correctly. Matty cheers. Granny, you got the most points. June's mom enters the room with a massive bowl of buttery popcorn. Who's ready for chitty chitty bang bang? Me. We three curl up on the couch. Tomorrow we head home after the first vacation of my life. Before this, I'd never been anywhere, except where we used to live, and I don't remember it much.
Very nice.
So I
A
really
little
like,
bit of a slice of life, huh?
Yeah.
and you did that in present tense, first person present tense, which, I don't see a lot of books that I've done a few myself that way. And I like it because the immediacy, it can be exhausting to write, right? Just remembering that you're in that present tense, but interesting that that was your choice. Was that a conscious decision on your part?
Yeah, most verse novels are present tense, first person. So it's a lot about what the main character is going through, a lot in their own mind. So it can be hard to try to show what's happening around them.
Yeah, agreed. That's one of the challenging parts is how do you show something that's going on out of sight of the main character, right? How would they know that that's happening? But very nice.
It was really, I thought I got a kick out of the old rule for writers is to take, whoever your protagonist is and keep heaping trouble after trouble after trouble on them. And when we read your synopsis of this book, it certainly felt like you were doing that.
Yeah.
And so having the excerpt be more of a moment of kids just being kids and enjoying themselves was kind of nice, actually.
Yep. Yeah. Because Charly does receive quite a bit of trouble in the book.
Yeah. So tell our listeners where they can find your book and where they can find more about you.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get my book into some of the local bookstores around town. And so I do have in a few Books and Company in Economowalk, Story Keepers Books in West Dallas, and Wonderland Books in Shorewood. And of course, you can find my book at Orange Hat Publishing's website.
All right,
Great.
very good. And then any book signings or appearances on the docket for you?
Yeah, I'll be at Milwaukee Literary Fest on August 23rd at the Mitchell Street Library.
Do you have a website that you maintain for yourself?
Yes, yeah, and it's LorisaDWiedenheft.com.
Okay, and I'm assuming you post all your signings or appearances there for people to find.
Yes, I'm trying to get the website up and going more. My Instagram is a little more current.
Got it. And we'll post those links in the show notes. So at this time, I want to thank Lorisa for coming on to introduce everybody to the Oasis. Thanks to everybody out there for listening in the Midwest Writers Room. I'm Ken Humphrey.
And I'm Luella Schmidt. Words ignite imaginations and spark change. Never underestimate the power of storytelling.
Midwest Writers Room is a production of the Wisconsin Writers Association. Writing and editing by Luella Schmidt and Ken Humphrey. Sound design and editing by Ken Humphrey. Music for the Midwest Writers Room is written by Michael Ramir C. For more information, please visit wiwrite.org/podcast. Thank you.